Alright, so after my last video, which was about proving to myself through scientific tools and theories and explanations that yes, there is a divine power out there that has a much higher vibration, and vibration is not just a jargon that you learn from some cool sources. It is a vibration, because everything that happens have a I mean, I don't want to get into it. If you want to check out why I came to the decision that it's really a vibration, if we can tap into that vibration, we've connected to the divine entity. Alright, so I wasn't done with it. We're done with exploring things. So my next move was to find about after the macro view, I needed to have a micro view. I wanted to know whether soul exists, or is it just something that perhaps our scriptures, old scriptures, have written about. There were innumerable things that I read about in the course of 3-4 days, and even previously I used to read off and on, but I have to give it to the texts that I found, and they were all those texts that were connected to Vethathiri Maharishi. Now, the explanation that he had given completely makes things so much easier for people who want to know whether their soul, what it is, and how can we preserve what we have. So here it is. Just unlike the last time, where most of the findings were something that I did not find on any website, I just tried to deduce things on my own. These are the things that I'm going to talk about are completely based on what the Maharishi had written, of course, plus minus a few things that I found on other websites. And of course, 1 to 2% is always one's own, because you give examples and you cite instances which you can't find anywhere else other than your own life. Okay, so here it is. All those people who have found themselves bugged by the idea of, or at least confused by the idea of whether there is soul, are going to find whatever I'm going to tell you helpful. And only those people will sit through until the end who are meant to know something about the mysteries of life force. Okay, so what's a life force? What it is? So these are the cells that I have drawn. So in each of these cells and around these cells, this is the nucleus, this is the cell membrane, okay? So in each of the cells, around the cells, are self-rotating particles that we have begun to call, in the text that you find today, vetons. Now, I haven't found why are they called vetons, but I think that is because it was Vethathiri Maharishi who came up with this theory. So on that basis, these particles, very small, much smaller than the smallest things we know, are called vetons. So they are just self-rotating. All of them are self-rotating particles, and these cells are also rotating, because inside them something is rotating, outside them something is rotating. All those things that keep on rotating become polarized. They become like magnets. They have poles, north pole, south pole. Whenever you have poles, you have magnetism, right? You attract things, you move. So all the cells, they congregate, they collect together. But since, because there is a concept in physics that due to the or any circular object that's any object which is moving on a circular path will experience centrifugal force, which means they'll throw things away. They'll throw things away from the center. So each of these cells is throwing away these life force particles, which could be taken as dust particles, the smallest, minutest, infinitely small dust particles that are called life force. They all collectively throw towards a center. Now that's the genetic center that I'll talk about a little later, and what exactly it is we'll talk about a little later. But just notice one thing: just like a cell will rotate and will have two poles, this particular congregation of dust particle will also rotate, will also behave like a magnet, because that too will have poles. Okay, so that's that. Now there are certain things you need to know, even if you think that none of it is making sense at this moment, or seem to go in the direction of whether soul exists. Of course it does. Spoiler thing, it's I've told you what I found early on, but I'll tell you why I think what I think. So these particles, coming back to these particles, because they hold so much importance, you'll find out in a while. So these are self-rotating entities, these particles, and whenever you have some energy, some force, there would be difference in the density of force. Not all the regions would have the same kind of force. At some places it would be less, at some places it would be high, and therefore there would be a wave created. So this wave is the magnetic wave, and since it comes from a living entity, it is called biomagnetism. So this is all you need to know about not exactly all you need to know, but this is one of the important things that you need to know about the life force. That these are if I put it precisely, secondly, I'll just say these are dust particles that are found inside a cell, outside the cell, since cell is a rotating entity, and it also have force around it. It behaves like a magnet. With two poles, and similar to the idea of a rotating object having a centrifugal force. All the cells together throw these dust particles of life force at one place, the genetic center. Or, okay, let me cut the chase, let me break the suspense, or the soul. Alright, so the polar attraction keeps the body. Now the polar attraction of each of these cells would help the body to be integrated into one big entity. Had there been no polar attraction between the cells, the body would have disintegrated. Now the third point, I have written this, but it's such bad handwriting that I'm finding it difficult to read my own handwriting. There are millions of such particles, the dust particles, the life force dust particles that are self-rotating, and they making magnetic waves, magnetic fields, and the strength of these magnetic field would tell us how healthy we are. So I guess so far so good. If you are there, you may have understood. Now, another thing, that Earth also rotates. Earth is also a big magnet. So just like a single cell would have these life force in and outside itself, even Earth has these life force particles that it drops on the Earth. Now these particles are lighter lighter in weight than the other physical elements that we know. What are the physical elements we know? We know earth, water, air, what else? Air, earth, water, air, ether. So it's lighter than all the elements that we know. Fire, okay, sorry, ether could be, this could be ether. So out of fire, water, earth and air, this the particle falling on earth, the life force particle, could be the ether that these spiritual books are talking about. So when this life force particles fall on earth, it could be enough, it could be sufficient for all the living beings, but it is not, because some of these particles get withered away because of the earth's rotation. This life force particles get dropped on earth, which is lighter than the other physical elements. This is this point that I'm talking about. Some of these life particles or life force particles are withered away because of the rotation of the earth, plus some of the particles that we get, a part of the particles, a section of the particles that we get used up by our sense organs in form of helping us to see, to smell, to feel, to taste, all these things, plus doing work. So withering away due to earth's rotation is the first point. Then sense organs would use up other life force particles that the earth throws on its beings. And the third thing is we would do work, which is why our life force particles get used up. So all these things are the reasons that we need another fuel to continue to be to continue to maintain our magnetic field. For that we eat food. Now food is turned into 7 minerals. It is turned into blood, and some part of the blood turns into flesh, and some part of the flesh turns into fats. Some parts of the fats, a section of it, calcium section of it, turns into bone, and some part of the bone continues to be the liquid part, which is bone marrow. Out of the bone marrow, the vital fluids, which are in the lower section of the body, which are known as vital sexual fluids, are created. Now this is the fluid which creates life force. You would always feel the lower part of the body, below the navel, in the pelvic region, there's always certain movements, circular movements that you feel. So all that kundalini talks, most of the people don't tell you that your lower chakras are mostly already activated. Excuse me, I think the light has gone. Okay, is already activated. And plus, since that part is activated, the soul gravitate towards the most active part, which are the lower chakras, and then those chakras would attract the life for so those chakras, because of being activated, has attracted the genetic center or the soul, and that's where the life force is created. What do you mean by life force? Again, it is the millions of dust particles that are always in motion, and since they're always in motion, they are always polarized, and since they're always polarized, they're always acting as magnets, and since there is a difference in the magnetism, magnetic waves are created. I don't want to stretch this video too long, so let me just finish it off. So it's because of the magnetic waves that we feel energized. And how can we continue to feel energized and rejuvenated without aging as fast as others are? By keeping the vital fluids, making optimum use of it, by not wasting it, by allowing more and more vital fluids to be created, because it's the vital fluids that are so much in motion that the dust particles around it also get energized, and when they move up, they energize the other cells of the body. Just like the example, this was an example that was said, that was given in the text that I read, that just like an electron moving in a wire would decide how much current is produced. So similarly, it's the life force particles in the body, how much of them are there will decide how energized you are. And in a battery, it's the quality of the acid and the amount of acid that decides for how long the battery would go on. Similarly, how long can you retain or keep your vital fluids contained in the body, because it's the vital fluids, according to Vethathiri Maharishi, that decides how long will you live. Once the vital fluids, which actually energizes the particles, the life force particles around it, because of the nature of the activation in that zone. That's the reason it's always better to continue to keep your vital fluids in good quantity and quality. What can you do for it? Eat well. Don't starve yourself, because it's the food that ultimately on the seventh stage turns into turns into vital fluids. See, food turning into blood, blood turning into flesh, flesh turning into fats, fats into bones, bones into bone marrow, bone marrow into the vital fluids. So eat well and eat the right food, so that you're never in dearth of vital fluids. Don't overeat. Eat the right kind of food. Second way to retain your vital fluids is to always having it continuing its activation, is by doing Ashwini Mudra. That's when it's the easiest kind of asana. It's when you sit relaxedly and just squeeze your downstairs, both front and back. So this is the easiest one. Then there are, of course, breathing exercises. Alright, now one little thing, this was about Vethathiri Maharishi, but there was something else I read elsewhere. Why is it called the genetic center, the soul? It's pretty much like a seed in a tree that would have every characteristic and feature that the tree would eventually have. It's condensed, it's compact. So similarly, when an ovum, alright, let's just say when a zygote is formed, that zygote would have everything, every feature put in a compact matter of the of the zygote, which would eventually become an embryo. Now, why would the characteristic pass on? See it as a process in which photocopy happens, or when you want to kill a mosquito with your slipper, a mosquito that's there on the wall, you would hit the mosquito or the spider with your slipper. So a fossil would be there on the wall as well as on your slipper. All right, so there it's just like photocopy in a way. So when one the zygote, or the embryo would develop a genetic center, the cells around it would hit it and carry would carry the same imprints in themselves. So that's how things happen. I don't know whether I've been able to explain the whole concept well enough. If I were to summarize, the real core thing in this whole process are vetons, the small dust particles. What else will you call it if not dust particles? So these self-rotating, highly energized dust particles inside and outside the cell, that makes it work like a magnet, which keeps the body integrated, and a whole circuit is created, a magnetic field is there. So if you and how where is the source of their energy? That's the lower part of your body, which is always activated. And since it is activated, and it is also a region where vital fluids are created. These are the vital fluids that would energize all other particles that go that move around it, and these particles would spread in all over your body, including your brain. And that's where the word mind comes from. There is consciousness all over the body, all over in the body, and to an extent outside the body in the form of aura. If you want to read more, there are texts available. I guess, I think we should just ponder upon how beautiful this process is, because I found this whole process quite beautiful.